What is up, everyone? It's Alex. Beginner motorcycles, part 3. We're doing dual sports today. This is a category of bikes I think a lot of people overlook when they're looking for a beginner motorcycle. They don't really think dual sports. Really, it's one of my favorite categories out there because you take something that a lot of us grew up with, like dirt bikes, and then you make them streetable. There's a lot of things about smaller dual sport motorcycles that make them really, really good for beginners, especially you taller beginners. So let's get into what I would recommend for beginner dual sport motorcycles and why. So first off, if you're on the taller side, you will find that even your smaller dual sport bikes are a lot taller and a lot easier for a tall person to feel comfortable on than some of the small sport bikes or small cruisers. But even if you're not on the taller side, a lot of them are not so overwhelmingly tall that a shorter person can't deal with them, and they're usually very light, which is a huge help with a beginner motorcycle like I've talked about before. So some recommendations I would have on dual sport motorcycles to look at, or dual purpose, however you want to put it, to look at for beginners would be stuff like Honda CRF 230s and CRF 250s, okay? They make these in the L version, which is the dual sport. You're not going to be able to kill it. It's a very light motorcycle, handles really, really easy. It's got that 230 or 250cc easy motor on it. It's just no muss, no fuss, very easy, very light, very fun. If you drop it, you're probably not going to break that much, and it's not going to punish you that bad for your mistakes. So Honda CRF 230 or 250L, I think is a really, really, really good choice to look at for beginner motorcycle, and you should be able to find them out there used pretty easy for pretty cheap as well, okay? Yamaha XT250s. Yamaha XT250s, fantastic. A little bit more old school, but you should be able to find it out there really cheap. Again, kind of like the CRF 230s, it's just a really basic, small engine, light, easy, very easy to get used to. Good choice for a beginner dual sport motorcycle, and you should be able to find them out there cheap. So check out an XT250. Staying on Yamaha, you want something a little bit fancier than XT250, a little bit more modern, a little bit taller, more aggressive, WR250. WR250s are fantastic. A little bit more pep than an XT250, a little bit more of a modern motorcycle. They didn't stick quite so much with the old school with it. A little bit more power, slightly taller. Still, it's a 250. It's still going to be easy. It's still going to be light. Really, really good choice for especially like you taller people, but you should still be able to find them used, but there's not as many of them out there, so that one's not going to be quite as cheap, okay? So that's like if you want a Yamaha, but you just want a little bit fancier, look at a WR250. Kawasaki put out something in more recent years that I think is actually really, really cool to look at for someone who wants a first-time bike and wants kind of a dual sport slash maybe dual sport adventure kind of bike. They put out a Versys 300, which is not a true dual sport bike. It's kind of like the small brother to the Versys 650 they've been making for years. So it's kind of a weird in-between on-roady bike with some off-road characteristics, but it's small enough and it's cool enough. And it's got good enough manners that I think that might be a really, really good choice for those of you that like dual sport or adventure-looking motorcycles. Maybe a little bit more towards the street manners. Small motor, all the right features, and you're going to be able to find them for pretty inexpensive. They haven't been out for that long, but I've already seen used ones out there inexpensive, and even brand new ones aren't really very expensive. So you might want to check out a Versys 300. I think that actually might be a good choice for some of you for dual sport that don't really plan on really leaving the pavement very much. Another good option from Kawasaki would be like a KLX 250 slash the mini KLRs. They're a little bit harder to find. I don't see as many of them. Maybe in your area you'll find that to be different. It's basically going to be the same idea as like the CRF 230 slash CRF 250s or that Yamaha XT 250. It's Kawasaki's entry. If you can find the Kawasaki 250, it's going to be basically along the same lines, just Kawasaki version of it, okay? So I don't really have to go that far into it, but KLX 250 slash KLR, the small one, if you can get a hold of one, great. Not the KLR 650. I think that needs to be like a second motorcycle and beyond it because it gets a little heavier and taller, but the KLX 250 series, the small KLR, if you can find them, probably not as easy to find as like the Honda or the Yamaha equivalents though. At least in my experience, it's not. The last one I want to mention, I'm going to give an honorable mention to Suzuki because Suzuki makes the DRZ 400, which I also think can be a very, very good first motorcycle. It's a little bit peppier than the other ones, and it tends to be a little bit on the tall side because they made it more for, they didn't really necessarily have beginners in mind when they were designing that, but It's a tame enough motor that a beginner can easily get used to it, but it's peppy enough, and there's enough really cool upgrades out there, especially from Yoshimura and companies like that, where you can make it a lot more fun. So a DRZ 400, either the DRZ 400 on off-road or the DRZ 400 SM, the Supermoto version, those are both really, really cool motorcycles. They're also motorcycles that advanced motorcycle riders grab as a second motorcycle because they're so much fun. If you can find a DRZ 400 or a 400 Supermoto used at a great price, that could be a really, really great option to look for if you can deal with the seat height, because they are on the taller side for this list, okay? And last but certainly not least, probably my favorite one on the list for today, and probably my highest recommended one if you can get your hands on one, is actually the Royal Enfield Himalayan. I know what you're thinking. It's a little bit bigger motor. It's a little bit different kind of motorcycle. It's more of a dual sport adventure bike, but hear me out on this. Royal Enfield Himalayan came out a couple years ago. So far, it's basically had nothing but a glowing track record, glowing reviews. There have been people that have ridden around the world on this thing. It's a 400cc, classic styled, dual sport, enduro, adventure motorcycle from Royal Enfield. Even brand new, they start out very, very inexpensive. So far, it's proven to be almost an unkillable motorcycle. It's a very rugged design. If you drop it, you're really not going to be that heartbroken about it. It's got guards everywhere, and everything is made out of durable stuff. If you break something, replace it. It's really not a big deal. The seat height for a bike in that class is really not that tall. It's a little bit heavier than some of the other entries, but with where the seat height is and everything else with it, I don't think that it's enough weight to really deter new riders from it. It's still not very heavy. It's heavier than some of these other bikes, but it's still really not that heavy. I really think if you're looking at a dual sport motorcycle for a beginner or even for a second bike, you really owe it to yourself to find a Royal Enfield Himalayan and go sit on it. I know Royal Enfield dealers are a little bit fewer further between. You might be able to find a used one. It's not going to be as easy to find a used one. You might have to buy one of these new, but I mean seriously, new, they're still only like $4,000 or something, okay? They're really, really not expensive. You could probably work a dealer even lower than that. Go look at a Himalayan. 400 cc's, fuel injected, rugged as crap. I have not seen anybody yet that was able to kill one. I'm sure there's people out there, so don't kill me for saying that, but I have not been able to see someone yet that could really tear up a Himalayan, okay? I got nothing but good things to say about it. I think it's a fantastic entry, especially for newer riders. Check out a Royal Enfield Himalayan. So just recap. If you're looking at dual sports, you want a beginner motorcycle, my recommendations. Look at Honda CRF 230/CRF 250s. Look at Yamaha XT 250s. Look at Yamaha WR 250s. Look at the Kawasaki KLX 250 and the Mini KLR if you can get your hands on them. Suzuki DRZ 400 and 400 SM if you can handle a taller seat height. Royal Enfield Himalayan 400. I cannot stress enough, if you can find one, I think that is a really, really good option for this category, okay? Dual sports are a great thing to look at for beginner motorcycles, especially if you want something a little bit taller or if you grew up with dirt bikes. Not enough people give this category enough consideration for a beginner motorcycle. They're durable, they're light, they're easy to deal with. Most of the time they have smaller motors. If you drop them, you're not nearly as sad about it because they don't have a lot of body work or fancy stuff on them generally. Go check out a dual sport motorcycle. And if it's not for you, sport bikes, cruisers, standards, there's still plenty of them out there. By the way, some of those videos are still coming, okay? I'm Alex, guys. Peace.